The Japanese officer forced an object into the man's mouth and tied up his limbs with ropes. Then the officer dragged the man's wife into the room and humiliated her. Seeing this, the man felt heartbroken. 5 seconds later, the officer finally walked out, satisfied. The officer even demanded that the man's student enter the room. The student immediately refused. Unexpectedly, the officer pulled out a pistol and threatened the student at gunpoint. With no choice, the student rushed into the room. At that moment, the man shed tears of despair. 3 seconds later, the student came out. Another officer's loyal subordinate eagerly rushed into the room. Soon, he also walked out. Then, with the Japanese officer's consent, they finally released the man's wife. However, when the poor woman walked out, she glanced at her husband one last time and said goodbye. Then she jumped from the 10th floor and died instantly. The man could only watch helplessly. Finally, the officer cut the ropes binding him. He ran down the stairs like a madman, but when he reached his wife, he found she was already lifeless. The 3 men upstairs looked satisfied. Seeing their cruel faces, the man silently vowed to avenge his wife. The first target was the sheriff. The man drew the shape of a manhole cover on a piece of cardboard. He asked his friend to buy countless large iron nails. He then fixed the nails onto a wooden board. That night, while the sheriff was still at work, they removed the manhole cover. They placed the cardboard with the drawn cover on the ground. Then they sprinkled sand around it to make it look real. Minutes later, the sheriff walked over carrying a bottle of alcohol. The next second, he stepped on the cardboard and fell into the trap. The thick iron nails pierced his body instantly. The man then replaced the real manhole cover. In this way, the man successfully eliminated one enemy. Next, he began his second act of revenge. One day, he saw a dog on the street. From passers-by, he learned that this dog ate one person every day. Hearing this, an idea immediately formed in his mind. The next day, the man held a funeral for his wife. Unexpectedly, the Japanese officer appeared to block him. The man had already anticipated this. He had arranged for an assassin to shoot at the officer. The officer immediately chased the assassin. He did not realize it was a trap. Earlier, they had poured a bucket of oil on the roof. When the officer stepped on it, he slipped and fell. In the yard below was the man-eating dog. The officer was bitten to death instantly. Another enemy, furious at the news, was uncertain if the man had done it. He immediately arrested the man and locked him in a large iron cage, trying to force him to reveal the truth. But this was exactly what the man had planned. He had already buried a large amount of explosives behind the prison. When his enemy sank the cage into the water, the man slowly used a hidden blade to cut the ropes. At the same moment, his companion ignited the explosives. The man had already freed himself from the ropes. The enemy realized something was wrong, but it was too late. A violent explosion occurred, and the enemy was instantly consumed by the blast. The man survived because he was hiding underwater. Finally, the man successfully avenged his wife.